So today, Sherry and I had the privilege of speaking to Mr. Bryce Tracy. Bryce has served as the 911 coordinator and assistant emergency manager for Mackinac County for 17 years. He is currently president of the Michigan Communications Directors Association, appointed by the governor on his third term, and is the chairman of the Michigan Public Safety Communications Interoperability Board, vice chairman of the local LEPC, member of the Upper Peninsula Region 8 Homeland Security Planning Board, member of the SNC Legislative Action Subcommittee. Bryce also represents on the FEMA Region 5 Regional Emergency Communications Coordinations Working Group. Bryce is also active in various other emergency management and fire safety organizations. Bryce is certified as a communications comm and CommT and is serving for over 30 years now as a firefighter, fire officer, and hazardous materials technician. He has also been active for over 24 years as Michigan Bureau of Fire Services fire instructor. So, Bryce, just to start off, can you give us an idea of what was your first job, when and where?
Well, good morning to both of you, and thanks for having me on today. So, my first role in public safety actually started off before I even graduated high school. I joined a local fire department in my area, the Carp Lake Township Fire Department, and they sort of had a cadet program at the time, and I joined in with them, went to fire meetings, went to some of their trainings and stuff like that. And then when I got of age and was able to take fire training classes during my senior year of high school, and then after high school, I became a certified firefighter according to the state of Michigan standards, and then was on the fire department serving that. So that was really my first taste of anything to do with emergency response or public safety.
Wow. And can you give me an idea of what year that was?
Sure, I can go right back. I actually got certified in 1992. So I started really in like 1990, 1989 time in the cadet program. And then I first got certified and went through the training as a firefighter to be a firefighter in the state of Michigan in 92.
Cool. I do see you're an expert in MABAS, MABAS. Now, can you describe to us, for our listeners and me who don't know what that is, what is MABAS, and if I'm saying it correctly?
It's MABAS. That's okay.
MABAS.
It's called MABAS. Yeah.
Okay.
Mutual Aid Box Alarm System. It's called MABAS. And I'm definitely not an expert. I'm a fire guy, and I might be a little bit geeky on some things in regards to communication and dispatch stuff, but I'm definitely not an expert. The MABAS program actually started down near Chicago and in the Illinois area, if we look at it from a U.S. standpoint. And really what it is, it's about automatic aid for fire departments. We've all heard the term mutual aid, where one department requests aid from another department, for specific things. That's what we call mutual aid, and they develop agreements between them for that mutual aid. What automatic aid is, it takes it one step further, is that for certain types of calls, let's say a structure fire per se, when that department gets paged out for a call at 123 Main Street, instead of requesting for the aid, it's built into the dispatch system where there's automatic aid.
Okay.
So when the call pops up on the caller's screen, the dispatcher normally gets what we call a telltale, or a list of what resources are responsible to respond to that particular address or location. What it is now with MABAS and with automatic aid, it's automatically predetermined what resources locally, and then what might be considered mutual aid resources, now become automatic aid resources to that particular address. And it might be an engine, it might be a truck, it might be manpower, or a full station response coming into that primary area that's originally meant to respond. So that's really what that's all about. It can be very complex, but yet it's so simple at the same time. It's hard to describe in a short time frame.
Cool. I do have a little follow-up question on that, because it is very interesting. With a fire department, would every single piece of the fire department's equipment be considered mutual aid and be used in MABAS? I'm sorry.
Oh, no, that's the glory of everything. What really happens is the command staff or the fire chiefs or the authority boards having jurisdiction over those fire departments, whoever governs those fire departments, they actually predetermine ahead of time what they want sent. It also has to do with availability. If the department next door to you, who you have an automatic aid agreement with, is already out on another call, maybe they're busy or whatever, it skips to the next adjacent department that's built into the agreement or built into the call process. So it's really flexible. It's modular, so you can bring as many pieces to the table as you want. But also, if they're not available, or if you're out of service, or if something changes in the department demographics, maybe they lose a unit due to a mechanical breakdown, maybe they lose some manpower and staffing for a short time, that agreement gets changed. And then it also gets changed in what we might call the response plan in the CAD system at the dispatch center. It can always be adjusted. But really what it is, it's a governance piece. It dots the I's, crosses the T's, explains to everybody ahead of time what's going to go on, who, how, when, and where, and then also covers them for liability reasons. That's really what mutual aid or automatic aid compacts or agreements are all about.
Cool. Can you describe what your role is in the MABAS system locally or administratively, or what you do with it?
One of my big things with MABAS here at the local level, is you just work with the different fire departments. Now, I'll be quite frankly honest, not all of my departments are signed up with what we call the Michigan MABAS program. That program is actually growing throughout the state, primarily in the southern regions of Michigan. In the metro and the urban areas is where they're using it the most, because they operate a little bit differently than do the rural fire departments in northern Michigan and upper Michigan.
Of course.
But one of my roles has been in MABAS is basically through the interoperable communications capabilities that need to be done for that. And then I also helped out bridge a gap in regards to education and training for the 911 dispatch world. One of the big things about MABAS is there's a big connection and communication piece that needs to happen from the fire departments to the dispatch center, and then in turn, when there's a real call going on, the dispatch center that allocates resources from a larger area. They have what they call a red center that runs the MABAS program in Michigan, and that tracks fire resources that they pull in. So I'll just use an example. If you were sitting at a dispatch center in Lansing or Ingham County, you have the call that's going on that requests a MABAS activation, you're going to take care of your local resources in Ingham County. But if we're going to bring in resources from like Clinton County, Eaton County, Washtenaw, somewhere else around outside, that's where the Red Center assists the local dispatch center in bringing those resources into play, links them up through communications, directs them where to go. And then once they're at the scene and injected into the operation or within the incident command system that's put in place by the fire departments, then the dispatch centers can relax a little bit after that, because the incident commander or the command system on scene tracks and keeps track of the communications for the fire resources operating at that time.
Very cool. How did you get into that position? To get involved with all that? It was just natural progression?
Sort of a natural progression, but if you go back to how you gave my, eloquent intro, and it's probably way beyond what I really, really am, but I've been in this business for a little bit of while. I've always had a fire and rescue response side. And then when I got into 911, one of my goals personally was never forget where you came from. So I can see what I might call both sides of the fence or both lanes of the road. I understand things from a responder aspect, and I also have an understanding of things from a dispatcher or a dispatch center aspect. And in order to make those two things work together, which you can assume when you're mixing public safety from law enforcement, EMS, or fire, there's never any personalities in those realms. Oh, wait, let's talk about dispatchers and dispatch directors and the administrative. There's no personalities there, right? It's like we're all alpha wolves, and we're trying to herd them to all talk and work together. We have this call that comes on. It looks like a big, juicy piece of steak, and we all want to take a bite out of it. Well, there's enough for everybody here. We got to work together. So slow it down a little bit. That's how I look at it. I can see both sides, and I relate to them. I'm not saying I'm perfect or the expert, but sometimes I try to get those people to the table together, and we can all eat at the same time.
I like it.
That's funny.
Awesome.
Bryce, you say you're not an expert in MABAS, and if I'll let you have that, although I don't agree. Um, how do you know how many states have a MABAS program at any size?
I don't have that data right off the top of my head, Sherry. I know, it really, if you look at it from a United States perspective, it really bred itself and grew and evolved out of Illinois. That's where it really first started coming through. And I guess in a more organized or being, marketed fashion out to the other fire departments across the U.S. I know that there are many other areas that are using MABAS in concept, maybe not in formality, because if you look at MABAS in depth, it's really a built-in emergency management for fire resources type thing. It does much more than just automatic aid for the fire departments and the fire service. It dives into things like urban search and rescue, specialized teams like hazmat and rescue teams, everything that comes into play there. So it does a little bit more. And in Illinois, it's even developed special statewide resource deployment compacts for aid in there at the regional and at the statewide level. So I don't have the data on how many states have done it, but I can tell you in concept across the United States, in the big city areas, the urban metro areas, where they might not have a department that's very big in numbers or geographic size area, where they're asking for that aid and come in, it's grown exponentially. But if you look also, too, at the fire service across the United States, if you look at the trend, what's going on in the last 5 to 10 years, we're seeing the same things that are going on in the trade industry across the United States. Not a lot of people want to do these jobs. So our manpower shortages are becoming more prevalent, not across the demographics, urban, rural, doesn't matter where we're at. So these types of things, these types of concepts are going to become more important to try and do our best to provide emergency response to the citizens that call upon us in those areas. So all of these things, mutual aid, automatic aid, the agreements that go with them, the pre-planning, it's going to be huge here in the future unless, it's going to be huge. I don't know how to say it. It's the only way you can manage them.
Right. Well, I know there's a lot of PSAPs out there that have you to thank for the training. So I'll just thank you for us.
Well, thanks, Sherry. I appreciate it.
What do you like most about your dual role as emergency manager and 911 coordinator?
I don't know if I can put my finger on something that I like most. I think one of the things that we all get into this profession for a certain reason. Whether, some people get into it professionally for a paycheck, some people get into it for that. I think one thing that I've always brought to the table is I have a passion for it and I like what I'm doing. And in turn with that, I know it's making a difference to the citizens in the community that I serve. If I look just at my own area, if I focus in on my own area where I live here in the eastern UP and around northern lower Michigan in the Straits area, I know that what a small part of what I do every day makes a difference on how things go when people do dial 911 and ask for an emergency response. One big thing in our area, we're very small in regards to population, year-round population, but we have a transient population that almost quadruples our population size during, the months of basically May through November through the year. We have here in the Straits area, we sort of got a gem that sits in our backyard called Mackinac Island. It's listed as probably one of the top tourist destinations in the Midwest, if not the United States, depending on who you listen to and who you go to. It's a big draw. It's like the light that the moths fly to during tourist season, and we get a huge transient population that comes in here. Yet our services that we have to provide through police, fire, medical, or other, they all have to handle those type things. And when you get all of those people coming in, emergencies and stuff don't stop. Instances happen. and we have to respond to that with the resources that we have. So we do our best to really share our resources across the board, regardless of discipline, regardless of area. This area has sort of like a 3 to 4 to 5 to 6 county area that we all share resources in. And yeah, we've had resources be deployed and shared from over 50 miles away at certain times. And people look at me and go, 50 miles to get to this call or wherever? Yeah, we do that because of the demographics that we do. And the other thing is we do it in all kinds of weather. Like right now we're coming into spring season. We just came out of a very cold winter season. So it doesn't, and I will say this, our winter seasons have actually gotten busier over the past decade with the outdoor recreation, snowmobiling, cross-country skiing, snowshoeing, the list goes on. It just keeps going now.
Well, I'm really glad you brought up shared resources because I have long admired the Upper Peninsula of Michigan because of the fiber loop. You guys were, frontiers in putting that in. Can you talk to us about the fiber loop and how your team put that together and just some of the details?
Sure, I'd be glad to. So, yeah, I've been around long enough to know the beginning stories, I guess, Sherry. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So, if we go back to I'm going to say go back to probably about 2006, 2007 time. A group of us 911 folks in the UP got together, and we formed a group called the UP 911 Authority. And really what the UP 911 Authority is made up of is a group of folks from 911 and local government, the authorities of local government. They're in charge of 911. We formed a group called the UP 911 Authority, and we wanted to get a better look at the infrastructure of how our 911 centers actually talk and communicate to each other to share resources and handle emergency calls across the region. If you remember back that time, I'm sure you're very, very knowledgeable of this too, Sherry. We were in a change in technology, going from the old copper landlines established in the 50s, going into the new cable, voice over IP, fiber optic communication network, and also the wireless cell phone industry was really exploding at that time. We were talking about prepaid cell phones and cell phone plans and how wireless calls were coming in, and we couldn't get accurate locations, and we needed a network to handle more data than the old traditional copper line networks couldn't handle. And at the time, we were struggling with basically a one entity provider for 911 call routing in the state. And it's not that they were a horrible company, but they weren't changing with the technology that we needed to. The expectations from the public and the expectations from us being able to properly handle and direct resources to these calls needed to be changed. So the UP 911 Authority actually started looking at what were the early auspices of next generation 911 as we know it today. The next generation 911 definition was actually built back then. If we look at NENA and the old I3 standards and stuff like that were coming out, we weren't the only ones thinking about it. It was being thought of across the U.S. too with our partners there. But we got lucky because we had a local telecommunications company in the area, actually a conglomerate of companies that formed a group called Peninsula Fiber Network. And what we really did is we got with them, we explained what we wanted to do, and we had a strategic future goal in a scope that they could actually see through. It wasn't a kaleidoscope, it was a focused scope. And they said, we could do this. So what really ended up happening, to make the story short, is we actually developed a public-private partnership with PFN. The public side being the UP 911 Authority and all the 911 directors in counties that were involved from across the Upper Peninsula, and then the private side, Peninsula Fiber Network. They had a fiber optic network where we were able to connect 8 dispatch centers, their telephony, their CAD, and their radio systems together to actually sort of set up, and I hate to use this word, a virtual consolidated PSAP across the entire UP. And back then, if you remember, there was a lot of talk about consolidations too, moving a couple centers into one. But we didn't need to build a grand Taj Mahal center to put everybody in. we are actually able to link up through fiber optic and a true EZInet, Emergency Services Internet Protocol, a secure internet. We're actually able to link up all 8 dispatch centers and virtually have all the dispatchers in those centers, which is about 25 dispatchers, link them up to handle 911 calls, share information through CAD, or back each other up on the radio console as needed, which is very, very helpful when you're sharing resources across a very large geographic area like the Upper Peninsula, Michigan.
I know it was a pretty amazing feat.
Yeah, it was. And, financially, we got lucky, too. There was a timing thing. If we go back to the early 2000s, there was the Public Safety Interoperable Communications Grant, otherwise called the PSAP grant back in the day. And really, to get this all together, we had a good idea. Yes, we did hire a consultant, but we developed an RFP for the project to be able to tie together the centers on the fiber optic network, have security for the connections, whether it be VPNs or authentication logins and everything. And then we also needed a CAD network at the time that could do things. So we actually developed this whole RFP, but we actually wrote a PSAP grant. A group of us did. It was a competitive one. And we actually, if you don't ask for a grant, you don't get anything, right?
Right,
so
right.
We put together the best grant we could. We asked, and we actually got granted funding for it. So that was a big factor for that. So the PSAP grant, I guess according to its program and its grant priorities, did what it was supposed to do in its intention. We were able to use that money from the federal PSAP grant and get the groundwork laid and get the ball rolling, and it's still working today. So it's great.
It is. It is. Well, when you got the PSAP grant, was it easier to get buy-in from all the agencies, or was the 911 authority, did that help get that buy-in? Because, sometimes there's pushback.
Well, yeah, I think that was probably the big thing that the UP 911 authority did, is that it was a true authority. So we could actually run things from a financial level within our own impact at the authority. So the buy-in from the counties are there. So the county still provided some funding into the UP 911 authority to do that, but we actually wrote the grant as the UP 911 authority. We do have a budget. We do manage, our own funding and stuff like that. So the big thing about the grant is obviously there's always going to be, I'll just use, for instance, let's look at the CAD, okay? CAD can be a monumental financial capital project for any center in the United States. It doesn't matter if they're small or big. We're talking into the million or millions of dollars range, depending on the size of the 911 center or the PSAP involved. In our case, we were trying to tie together 8 centers. So this CAD project was going to be pretty big and pretty monumental. So there's going to be an upfront cost that was in the millions of dollars to go through. Knowing that we were going to get quite a few $1 million to get this project started, absolutely helped with the buy-in, but it allowed us, through fiscal responsibility, to plan for the future. It's still alive. We've been paying from the local level the maintenance, the recurring fees that might go with it, all of that stuff from the PSAP level. So we built it, but yet it allowed us to financially plan to maintain it. In fact, to be quite frank with you, we're in the middle of the discovery process to either refresh or update our CAD system now, which is a big tie-in, as you know, in the 911 world of sharing information in regards to call taking and data. So we're actually looking for either a refresh, an update, or an all-new CAD system, but the base of the network that routes the calls, that ties the CAD systems together, that allows us to look at each other's and use each other's radios consoles, that EZInet through Peninsula Fiber Network, it's still in place and running today.
That's great. I remember when you went live, reporting on it, and it, maybe I don't remember it as well as I think. It seemed like it was pretty smooth.
Oh yeah, it went really smooth. It was pretty easy for us to do once we got the ball rolling. And one of the things that I'll tell you, and I'll be honest with you at the time, is that we were really trying our best to bring in other people across Michigan and around into the project for the portion of, at the time, nobody really had a big strategic list on how to do it, right? Everybody was talking about this is what next generation 911 is going to be. Here's some standards you want to see, but how do you really do it? How do you roll it out? How do you implement it? And I laugh because I say this haphazardly, but we really said, well, let's try it. What's going to happen? The worst that could happen is we're going to crash the 911 system, right? Let's take a risk. Let's try it. Let's see what happens. And I mean, we had vendors and everybody going, you're going to do what? And we just said, we're going to try it. I think we're smart enough. I think we're technologically inept enough to do it. We've got a network. We should be able to plug and play. We should be able to do it. And once we started doing it, things started making sense. And things started actually becoming more efficient. And again, I'm not despairing the previous company that routed 911 in the state of Michigan. I'm not saying that, but we're always fighting and debating about technology.
Right.
I guess the best thing about it is that we weren't afraid to evolve. We were able to try change as a risk, and it actually is working for us. So I think that's allowed us to evolve. It wasn't, we've always done it this way. We can't change.
Oh, no.
Yes, you can change. You've got to try it. And we tried it little bits at a time. And even though people say little bits at a time, we did change over the whole UP at once. I mean, it happened at once. Overnight, we moved everything off. But we really did a lot of planning and things ahead of time. And I think one of the things, too, that helped us out with that, and I'm just going to be quite frankly honest, is that if you look at the UP from a call data perspective, how busy they are and how many calls they handle, I think our demographics actually helped us experiment this in a lab format prior to saying we're fully on. Because our call volume and everything wasn't, when we rolled this out, we actually planned it for a rollout during the fall and the winter months, and then said in the spring we're good to go before a busy time. We were able to roll it out in smaller pieces and try all the layers and then find all those problems. We had problems. I'm not going to deny. We had lots of problems. When you're trying to tie in to a local telephone company that wasn't one of the majors and you're trying to get those call routing and connections in play, all the background stuff that goes into play, did we run into hurdles? We absolutely did. Did we run into some walls sometimes? Yes, we did. But I guess maybe we were stubborn and hard-headed enough to go through them and then work it out in the process. And we didn't do it with a big, technical guru guy in the background. I mean, we brought together people that had that, but we really did put it together as an experiment, and it worked. And we've built upon that. I'll say this: the NENA I3 standards that were put out beforehand, whoever put those together, they were pretty big forethoughters in all of this. We just took that and then used that to build a roadmap for us. And then now, if you look at it how it is today, that network has grown across the state of Michigan. We've got over 95% of the state of Michigan tied in on the same network with all the resiliency and redundancy and the way the calls are handled now. It's amazing. It goes well beyond the scope we ever thought it would.
Well, so that brings me to my next question. We've been talking about NG911 for, many years, and I've said, and others have said too, NG911 is never this. It's always going to be the next thing and the next thing. So you mentioned that the UP is relatively small as far as data. What do you foresee the future capabilities of the network loop being?
Well, I think one of the things is what type of traffic now is going to go across that loop. We can exchange, numerical data or packet data across really easy right now. We've been doing text to 911 for quite a while. What's going to happen with pictures to 911? What's going to happen with videos to 911? And then how do we share that type of data or those type of mediums down to our responders? It seems to be that we're getting more in this push for better situational awareness, better decision making. I really need to see what's going on instead of just getting a report or hear about what's going on. So how are those things going to come into play? How are we going to connect those things? Those are what's going to come down to the pike. But I still have an aspect is we have to understand technology is not an answer for everything. It's an augmenting piece. So we're going to have these things. I think our biggest debates is going to be how the responders are trained to handle with the incident, and then, after the call's taken and how we dispatch them through, and then how we share that information there. What are they going to need? What are going to be their policies, procedures, and best practices? I say this because I'm old enough to know, but yet I understand what's going on in the new world. Not everything is like a Call of Duty game or a Halo game where everything's being put in on the monitor in front of you as a responder. We still have to send people to the call. We still have to send resources to a call. They're not going to be able to handle everything from a remote aspect, from behind a screen or from behind a video camera. All of those things are pieces that augment the response in handling the call. And I know the push for technology is there. I think that the bigger thing that's going to happen with all of that technology is location validation. We're getting much more into GIS. We're talking not only X and Y now we're talking Z for elevation. Wireless calls is still a crapshoot sometimes,
right,
especially up here in our area where we don't have very heavy cellular infrastructure tower footprints, where we're still trying to triangulate calls or get a good GPS reading from a phone. I know with the advent of sort of skipping out of the 3G into the 4 and 5G complete network is going to help. But even then, if you look at the FCC, they haven't told AT&T, Verizon's, T-Mobile's, and I'm just using those three as an example.
Right.
They haven't told them you shall push this GPS location in through a call with the Annie and Allie through the 911 system or something like that. We're still talking about phase 2. We're still dealing with technologies like rapid SOS and other factors. So that's the next steps, is how are we going to evolve with these changes? It's not going to be an overnight success. We're going to have to try things and see how it goes, really.
So what is your next project? Is it continuing to evolve with this, or do you have something specific planned?
Well, right now, our next big project locally in the UP area is we have to refresh and update our CAD. We've got that coming up right now. How we store and how we share our information via CAD is very, very important to what I'm going to call the meat and potatoes of actually doing our daily work. It allows us to do our laundry and keep it clean and keep it organized. So CAD is probably our biggest thing. But I will tell you, in regards to location services, we've done a lot more implementations with things like Rapid SOS. We've talked about with some companies. We're having some early discussions now with a company called What 3 Words, who's out there doing some location things there. We're talking about what type of integrations those can come into play, and why is that important to us? We're a huge recreational area. We got people out hiking, biking, walking, riding their side-by-sides, their four-wheelers, or their snowmobiles in areas where there is no addressing or is no proper trail marking. We can put up trail signs, but they get knocked down or they get moved. You have to send people out to audit them. So anything to do with location services is probably going to be another big facet that comes into play. The other medias like pictures, video, we'll try those. Those are things that the wireless services, folks like PFN as a network carrier, they're always trying some of those little things out of the, those little bits come out of the lab every once in a while and we actually get to play with it, type thing. So we'll try those things out. And if they come more prevalent and more useful in our call processing and our response, then we'll use them. Why not? So those are the types of things there. I think one of our biggest factors coming out now is also going to be we're seeing the hit with personnel as well. Dispatchers levels, staffing levels down at the different centers. We're seeing the same thing. It's harder to get people to come into the job. We're fighting in the market in regards to hourly wage and salary and everything else.
Yeah.
People look around them and see what's going on. So I think one of the things that we already have a good first step on is going to be that sharing of the dispatch resources at the virtual level. We might have a lot more instances now of calls being routed from a local standpoint to another adjacent center to have the call taking or the call start for the dispatch and then the call dispatch to local centers. So sort of that, our centers are set up, our dispatchers do everything. They take the call, They find the resources for the call. They dispatch and track the resources during the call. We don't really have at our local centers, per se, a call taker position and a dispatch position sitting at the different desk. We're doing it all together. So we might have to take in some of those concepts like, hey, this dispatch center, after so many calls come into our center, is going to do more call taking and take in the call and then send the call back via CAD for us to dispatch after. We might have to do more of those sharing of resources here in the future because of the staffing levels that are going on. When and where that's going to be fixed, I have no clue. But in this post-COVID environment right now, I know we're not the only ones dealing with what I'm going to call this HR staffing conundrum.
Right. And we've heard it nationwide, so it is. Well, so I have some more questions for you as far as your involvement in public safety. When Zach was introducing you, he mentioned several different things. You're the current president of the MCDA, which is a very valuable organization for the state of Michigan directors. Can you share 2 or 3 topics of what you enjoy most about the MCDA or the direction they're going? And maybe we'll even go into a little bit if you're aware of how MCDA was founded.
Sure, it'd be my pleasure to. So the Michigan Communication Directors Association is what the MCDA is about. It's a Michigan-based group of folks involved in 911, directors, coordinators, even some operations managers, but it's really meant for the administrative level folks to get together there. We sort of work in tune with our partners from APCO and NENA across the state, sort of a similar type of organization, but we're really focused, again, on the upper administrative levels at the directors and the operations managers type thing of that. The MCDA came about really just a couple counties getting together, sitting around a coffee table and talking shop about 911 back in the very early to mid 90s. If you want to look at how the MCDA started, it started with some folks that were what I might call icons in my early 911 way when I first got to meet them, but it was just a group of about 5 or 6 of them that decided, hey, we're going to get together at this restaurant and we're going to have breakfast or lunch together and a cup of coffee, and I want to talk about, hey, I'm doing this at my 911 center, you're doing that. Oh, that's a great idea. Maybe I should try it. Or I'm having these problems and I don't really have anybody to talk to. I don't have a friend to talk to. I don't know anybody else who's in my same position. Have you dealt with this issue or this problem before? And that's how the MCDA really started. The MCDA really came about back in 1997. It got organized as an association back in 1996 and 97. It actually became its own, association group formally. And it's now evolved into a group of 911 directors across the state of Michigan of over 150 members now, which is just phenomenal. In fact, we've got a big directors school and a meeting coming up here in April down in the Ann Arbor area that has over 75 people signed up for it to go to the training and to the meeting. And everybody says, well, directors school, what do you mean? Well, even us who's been in the business for a while and even all the new directors, we're seeing a changeover of directors from there, from previous years. We need to get together and we need to talk about what's going on in the 911 world and also be able to do it in an intimate, private, safe setting, a trusted setting where we can talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly, okay? And if I really put that all into perspective, the best thing about the MCDA is it's developed networking and relationships. You know who your fellow 911 directors are from across the state. It doesn't matter if they're from the county next to you or from a county all the way across the state from you. We all get together and we all have knacks. We all have personalities. We all have things that we all do well, okay? And we all have things that we might not be great at. But what's really cool is I can call up one of my counterparts across the state who might be really good at something that I'm having an issue with. I can call them up on the phone. I can exchange an email. I can post a question on our discussion board through the MCDA website, and I can get input from them. And we can share problem-solving resources. We can share opinions. We can share, hey, this is what's going on. And we can share and celebrate our positive outcomes. And then we can also be there to share and support during negative outcomes. If I go back to things like dispatch centers here recently during COVID, had a couple dispatchers that were lost due to the COVID pandemic, due to medical things. And that affects each center. But guess what? We were able to get another director and a few dispatchers together. We sent them over to their center and helped cover the center during a funeral service or a funeral call. Or we got together and sent over goodie baskets and plants and flowers to put in the dispatch center to help keep the morale up at the dispatch center and let them know they're not alone and help them out in what might be their grieving process or whatever else. Really, that's what it's about. The networking and the relationships between the 911 directors and then down to their levels to the staff below them, that's what the MCDA is all about. And we tackle everything from what happens in the dispatch center in discussion, but we also have gotten together in recent years, and I say very efficiently in the past 10 years. And what happened in the past 10 years that was really big was 2 real big legislative sessions that involved Michigan's 911 Act. And we were involved. We were able to educate, outreach, work with our legislators to secure 911 funding and the legislation that supports 911 in Michigan. We've done it 2 very heavy lifts from a legislative level in the past 10 years, and the MCDA was a big part of that because we got a group of people together that understood what the legislation was about, what the legislation needed to do to protect funding, secure 911 as an infrastructure network in the state, and handle emergency calls in the state. And those are things that the MCDA does from the base of its organization. I'm just honored to be a part of it. Right now, I'm lucky to be the president currently for the next year, but I'm just one small part of a large group of people that have done all of these positive things in support of 911.
That's an amazing description. I thank you for sharing that. I certainly share your feelings and sentiments about the MCDA. Do you have any plans as the president or as the executive board? Are there projects or specific changes you want to take on?
No, I don't have any real specific one other than I'm going to use an overall umbrella one. We're going to go back to basics. Really, if you think about it, we're getting back to basics. What really are the elements and the basics of 911, regardless of all the tie-ins of technology, regardless of all the networks that come around us? A big part of it is understanding what those elements are, the basics behind 911, and the communications, the networking, and relationships it takes to really make it operate. That's what it's all about. So we need to know who we are, where we are, who does what where, and how can we help each other out. The rest of that stuff in regards to governance, the technology, the NG911 systems, the EZNets, all that stuff come into play. It still takes the people behind it to make it work. So, we all lived through COVID here recently. We lived behind our computer screens just like we are now. We were doing Microsoft Teams meetings, Zoom meetings, Google Meet, GoToWeb, whatever it was, we were there. But there's still something about getting those people together, seeing their personalities, seeing their traits, seeing the best, the worst, or the in-between of all of them. Being able to tangibly grab a hold of something and work on it with a person. In fact, being able to shake a hand, give a hug, share a smile, see those interpersonal communications, those are still a part of 911 no matter what. So like I just mentioned earlier, we've got this director school coming up for 2 days prior to the next 911, prior to the next MCDA meeting coming up here in April. Those 2 days are going to be phenomenal for us. We're going to be out of our office. Yes, we might be checking our emails and our laptops during the training, but we're actually going to be able to sit down and talk and chew on 911 issues together. We're going to be at the table, and we're going to be talking about best practices, and we're going to be able to say, hey, I tried this. This might work for you. Or you did that, and I want to try it. That might work for me. Hey, I've got a template for a policy or a procedure. not reinvent the wheel. Let's share it. Maybe we can make it work. Those things actually help standardize things and make it easier for everybody to understand and know what's going to be expected during a time of emergency. And Sherry, you've been through this just as well as I do. The network and relationships that you build throughout your career, it doesn't matter if it's 911 or anything else, those are what you go and grab out of the toolbox when it's needed most. You call, phone a friend, they're there to help you. There's a trust level there, and that's really what makes 911 work. It still takes people. We're going to do whatever we can to build relationships, network, and bring back the basic understanding of what 911 and its elements are about for all of those people. That's really my goal.
That's a great goal. There were a lot of directors that retired in the last 2 years since 2020, and we didn't have meetings. And for me personally, the MCDA was such a big part of my career here in Michigan. It was it was kind of sad that we didn't have a meeting to say goodbye. It's just not the same on Zoom.
Right. And another thing, Sherry, I'll take it this way. In today's information society, we're always used to asking a question and getting an answer, or, hey, we can go Google that right now and find out what's going on and figure out what's right. None of that can replace experience. People have experience. And we cannot take our experiences and put a cable in our head and plug it into a new director and just exchange all of that to them, like we do with a lot of other things.
Right.
Okay. We can't make a jump drive of what Bryce went through compared to what you, Sherry, went through in 911 and exchange that and make everybody understand it. I like talking about the movie The Matrix. You don't just plug in the back of your head and now you automatically can fly a helicopter.
Right.
It doesn't work that way. You have to go through the training. You have to go through the experiences. You're going to go through the ups and downs. Now, how do you share that information and train those people with that knowledge to move on and evolve after you're gone? Because that's been the big thing now. When I started into 911, my first director's school that I ever went to was in 2005 in West Branch. And I walked in this room of all my peers who are now my peers. And some of them you look at and you remember some of the names. They were icons.
Yes.
They were groundbreakers. They tried something. They made people mad, but yet they moved forward, and it was the right thing to do. Now I'm on the other end of that spectrum, and I want to make sure we do the same thing for those people coming in. I'm not the oldest. I'm not the most experienced, and I'm definitely not the expert, but now I'm in a position where I want to guide that, and I want those other people coming in that are new to 911, to have the same chance to be able to talk and learn from them and gain that experience, because they're the next ones.
That's great. That's a great vision. I like that. What does your future look like, Bryce? I mean, not asking you to reveal any retirement dates but where do you see yourself in the future, however long that may be?
Well, I'll make a laugh. I'm in complete acceptance of my age. I'm 47 years old. There's no denying it. So I'm to the second step now. I'm in full acceptance of where my age are at. When and where am I going to retire? I have no clue. I've been very lucky and very blessed to be in the position here in Mackinac County where I've been at for 17 years. It's been very stable. I do have a family here. My family's around me. Particularly, I got my two kids here around me. My daughter right now is 16 and currently a sophomore in high school, finishing up her sophomore year, and she's busy with all of those activities and stuff there. So I can guarantee you right now, for at least for the next couple years, I'm not going anywhere. But the other thing is, I've always been a big fan of stability, and I've always been dedicated to where I've come from, and that's been a big thing, and I'm pretty passionate about that. And I want to, if I'm going to leave this area or going to leave this particular position, I'm going to need some time with somebody to make sure that they can evolve and take over the position and make it their own. It's not going to be a cookie cutter thing. The next person coming in isn't going to be me, and I don't expect them to be me. There's things that I do that somebody else isn't going to do, and they're going to make changes, and they're going to make things as well. So it's going to be some time for that. I can tell you this, I don't have a set retirement age. I'm not saying at 55 or 56 I'm done, or 62 or anything of that sort. I don't feel old. Age is but a number. I'm still pretty passionate. There's still things that I'm going to do. Whether I stay with Mackinac County or go away, I have no answer to that right now. I still plan to be involved not only locally but across the state for a number of years. We got a lot of things that are moving, forward here, and I want to make sure that they go through because my name is on it. And I'm not saying that my name has to be on everything. I'm not looking for the accolades and the awards or the pat on the backs. That's not it. But usually when I try to start something, I try to finish it, and that's just an honesty and an integrity thing for my personal aspect. But I don't think I'm going away anytime soon. I think I got quite a few years left in me. I'll be somewhere. And even though I'm short, I'll be heard.
Thanks, Bryce, so much for joining us today. I mean, do you have any last word of wisdom for our viewers?
I don't think it's. I don't know if it's words of wisdom. I'll just say this from there. If you're lucky enough to get in a position that you're passionate about and you like what you do, don't be afraid to try something, especially if it's the right thing. Doing the right thing isn't always easy. In today's climate, demographics, everybody's going to have an opinion. Everybody's going to question everything. But also don't forget where you came from and don't forget the basic things that taught you where you're at today. You have experiences to bring to the table. When those experiences are used and who grabs onto them is going to be there. You're going to be looked at differently. You're going to go through those things. I know that's tough for a lot of people. A lot of people have anxiety. They worry about doing everything perfect. The world isn't perfect, but I look at it from this aspect here. Never forget who you're doing it for. In this 911 business, we do things to help keep the life safety or the quality of life for everybody as good as it possibly can be. We can't save everybody. We can't always fix everything for everybody, but we can always do something to enhance their life safety or make it better. And we, in the 911 world, we're that first lifeline. We're that first call. We are first responders, just like police, fire, and EMS. And I don't sit in the dispatch chair like a lot of my fellow dispatchers do in the 911 world. I give a lot of credit for what they do and what they put through every day of the week. They've got stresses just like we do in life, outside of work, and everything else. But if you really think about it, doing the right thing is given the best chance and opportunity to make somebody's life better, maybe even make them smile that day, or get people there to help their life be better. It's all about life safety. That's the number one priority. And that starts with you and then what you do with those around you. And you never forget about your friends. You never forget about your family, both at home and both in your professional life. And if you can juggle those things together, which we're all jugglers, we're all multitaskers, if you can do that, you'll find your happy place. And I say that there is what you'll find your happy place is that we all have days where we get up and we dread going to work and, man, I'm really not feeling it today. But I've been lucky enough to be in a position where I don't hate my job. I love my job. I love what I'm doing. And some of the other aspects about what I'm getting paid and what's on the to-do list today and, oh my gosh, I forgot to get this out to my board and I got to do this. You can plead forgiveness later. It's going to be okay. You're human. You're just doing the best that you possibly can.
Thank you very, very much, Bryce. I wish you all the best of luck in your future and your current projects, and have a great day.
Well, thank you, Sherry. It was a pleasure. It was great to see you again, as always, and I'm sure we'll see you around. And thanks to everybody for allowing me to be on this today. And if I happen to meet any of you who I haven't met through this, it'd be a pleasure to meet you and see you around. Everybody take care and have a great day.
Thank you.